All right, the Gulf Coast, we know it's unfortunately a horrible milestone this season. It was just 20 years ago that the Gulf Coast was forever changed from Hurricane Katrina. August marks 2 decades since that storm made landfall as a strong Category 3. Katrina, it's one of the deadliest and costliest storms to ever strike the United States. It stretched the length of the Mississippi Gulf Coast all the way over into Alabama, hitting the Mississippi-Louisiana coastal border before continuing northward. The impact of Katrina, it endures to this day. Fox weather correspondent Brandy Campbell has more from New Orleans.
Well, this hurricane season, Gulf and Atlantic cities are preparing, but here in New Orleans, it's also a moment of reflection given Hurricane Katrina's 20th anniversary. It was one of the deadliest storms in U.S. history and a turning point here in the city, forcing them to prepare and also avoid repeating the past.
It's an extremely desperate situation.
We had to learn some very painful lessons from Hurricane Katrina.
On August 29, 2005, Katrina struck, a fierce Category 3 hurricane. About 20% of residents stayed behind, facing the storm head-on.
But I wasn't gonna go. I should have went.
Catastrophic levee failures allowed water to rush in, threatening residents like Clarence White.
Frightening thing was watching that water just rise and just kept rising, until we made a decision, said we got to get out of here.
Nearly 1,400 died along Katrina's path. White recalls vivid memories after his escape to the Superdome.
And I have witnessed dead bodies just floating down this street right here. I have a good memory of it. And we just stood outside the dome, just the area we were in.
The storm wasn't the only disaster. The response was its own.
20 years ago, one of the biggest problems was communication and coordination.
The people that worked in this city and that were in this government and in this public safety network were heroes, but they didn't have what they needed to get the job done. And that was not just from the local level, but that was from the state and federal level as well. What's been done over 20 years is correcting that and making sure that we have those partnerships with our state and federal partners, and that we know that when we're on our back and we're down and out because of a storm, that we have the backup and the cavalry coming in to help us.
Over the years, storm plans continue to evolve.
I remember in 2005, texting was new.
Now residents can get emergency text alerts from the city, and there's a plan to evacuate the most vulnerable.
As local, state, and federal partnership, it involves motor coach buses, airplanes, and even Amtrak trains, moving people out of the city.
And if there's no time,
where if we have to, we can shelter, refuge, the most vulnerable in our population. I'm considering that to be seniors. I'm considering that to be people with pre-existing medical conditions and mobility issues.
And I know you mentioned that's for the vulnerable communities. What about like low-income families?
We're going to try and do it for everybody, but we do have a focus.
While the Superdome was a refuge of last resort in '05,
it's not a suitable facility. It wasn't then, and it's not now.
They're now considering other city buildings.
We've got about 70,000 square feet of critical supply storage for public safety agencies, which includes medical supplies, cots, rescue equipment, and a lot more. And we're just getting started there.
Contraflow is still an option, flipping certain interstate lanes outbound.
There are no cars coming that way.
It was first used during Katrina, but are leaders still banking on it?
Unfortunately, the storms are coming faster, and we don't have an opportunity to rely on contraflow.
72 hours is needed to activate it, only after the New Orleans Metro calls for mandatory evacuations with a Category 3 storm threat.
So if you look at the timeline that we have to implement contraflow, which is extremely difficult, right? We need all roads still going in. We need more gas. We need more supplies. We need more people coming in before we can flip all the roads going out.
While getting out is key, so is keeping water out.
Now, part of moving forward is remembering the past and learning from it. I'm standing inside of the flooded house museum. This is a frozen moment in time of what many New Orleanians came home to after the levees failed in 2005. You can see just pieces of what made up this home. This was a reality. In fact, this very home flooded as well.
During Katrina and in its aftermath, over 50 levee breaches caused flooding in 80% of the city, including here in the lower 9th Ward.
The levees weren't designed to handle the storm surge that we had here.
Since then, a $14.6 billion upgrade was made in the flood defense system. It added floodgates, a 1.8-mile-long storm surge barrier, and better flood walls.
T-wall. This is a T-wall. What you can see is the stem of the T and the top of the T in the dirt. Now, beneath that piece of concrete down there are piling and sheet piling so that if water would come up to it, it's strong enough with enough safety factor to not just fall the heck over.
Do you think this would survive another Katrina?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I think the city prepared. I really do. I know I'm prepared.
In New Orleans, I'm Brandy Campbell for Fox Weather.